The verdict that money could not buy this fictional dramatization is for entertainment and does not provide legal advice. Stay with this story until the final verdict, because the moment that shocked a ballroom full of America's most powerful people was only the beginning. Before we start, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments what you would have done if you had witnessed a pregnant woman being publicly humiliated by the man who promised to protect her. Now listen closely, because long before a judge entered the courtroom, justice had already begun recording every word. The crystal chandelier scattered warm light across the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Century Plaza in Los Angeles. A string quartet played beside the stage. Politicians, executives, donors, and television personalities moved through the room beneath banners for the Caldwell Foundation's annual maternal health gala. Then the music seemed to disappear. Claire Donovan Caldwell, 8 months pregnant, stood near the center of the ballroom with one hand beneath her abdomen. Her pale blue dress caught the light, but her face had lost all color. Across from her stood Vanessa Brooks, the foundation's newly appointed communications director, and the woman Claire had recently discovered was having an affair with her husband. Ethan Caldwell did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "You embarrassed Vanessa in front of my investors," he said. "Apologize." Claire looked around the room. More than 300 guests had gone silent. Several people had already lifted their phones. Others stared at the floor, as though refusing to watch could erase what was happening. "I asked her why she was wearing my bracelet," Claire said. Her voice trembled, but it remained clear. "The bracelet my mother left me." Vanessa touched the diamond bracelet on her wrist and smiled. "Ethan gave it to me." Claire turned to her husband. 5 years earlier, she had sold her small condominium to help him keep his first development company alive. She had worked beside him when his office was a rented room above a tire shop. She had believed his promises when he said success would never change the way he looked at her. Now Ethan's expression held only impatience. "Apologize," he repeated, "for asking why your mistress is wearing my mother's bracelet?" A murmur passed through the room. Vanessa's smile disappeared. "You see? She cannot control herself." Ethan stepped closer to Claire. "Do not make this worse." Claire's daughter moved beneath her ribs. She pressed her palm against the tiny kick and searched Ethan's face for the man who had once spent an entire night assembling a crib because he refused to let anyone else do it. That man did not appear. Vanessa pointed toward the floor. "A sincere apology would be appropriate." Claire stared at her. "You want me to kneel?" No one in the ballroom breathed. Ethan's answer came without hesitation. "If that is what it takes for you to understand your place tonight." Several guests gasped. A young banquet server near the stage slipped his phone from his pocket. Above them, the hotel's security cameras continued recording. Claire did not kneel because she believed Vanessa deserved an apology. She lowered herself because a sudden tightening crossed her abdomen, and she feared she might fall. One knee touched the marble, then the other. Hundreds of people saw humiliation. Only Claire felt the pain. Vanessa leaned closer. "Louder." Claire looked up at Ethan. "Please, something is wrong." He glanced toward the stage, where the foundation president was waiting to introduce him. "Do not create another scene." A warm sensation spread beneath Claire's dress. She looked down and saw a thin line of blood against the pale fabric. The first person to move was not her husband. 71-year-old donor Ruth Ellison pushed through the crowd and knelt beside her. "Call 911, she shouted. "Now." The room broke apart. Servers ran toward the doors. Guests backed away. Someone called for the hotel's medical team. Vanessa stepped behind Ethan as though distance could separate her from what she had demanded. Claire reached for her husband. "Ethan." He took one step toward her, but Vanessa caught his arm. "If you leave now," she whispered, "the press will turn this into an admission." Ethan stopped. That single decision would later matter more than every statement his lawyers prepared. Paramedics arrived within minutes. As they lifted Claire onto a stretcher, she kept asking one question. "Is my baby still moving?" One paramedic placed a monitor against her abdomen. A rapid heartbeat filled the ballroom. "Alive." Claire closed her eyes in relief. As the stretcher passed Ethan, the paramedic asked, "Are you coming with your wife?" Every camera turned toward him. Ethan looked at the donors, the stage, and the reporters. Then he said, "My assistant will follow." The ambulance doors closed without him. By midnight, the video of Claire on her knees had been viewed more than 6 million times. By morning, The country knew Ethan Caldwell's name for a reason no public relations firm could repair. But the most important evidence was not the viral video. It was a 12-second recording made backstage before the confrontation when Ethan told Vanessa, "She cares too much about appearances. With everyone watching, she will do exactly what I tell her." And months later, inside a Los Angeles courtroom, those 12 seconds would answer the question Ethan believed money could silence. Was the humiliation an impulsive marital argument, or was it planned? 1 week before the gala, Claire still believed her marriage might be repaired. The Caldwell home stood above Beverly Hills behind limestone walls and trimmed hedges. From the outside, it looked serene. Inside, silence occupied every room. Claire woke early because sleep had become difficult during the final weeks of pregnancy. She prepared oatmeal, answered messages from the nursery designer, and reviewed invitations for the foundation gala. The foundation had been her idea. After losing her own mother to complications following childbirth, Claire had persuaded Ethan to fund clinics serving women who lacked adequate prenatal care. In the beginning, they had built everything together. Ethan once drove a truck with a broken air conditioner. Claire handled invoices at their kitchen table while he negotiated construction contracts. When a bank refused his first major loan, she sold the condominium her mother had left her and invested the money in his company. Ethan cried when she handed him the check. One day, he had promised, "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret believing in me." Success arrived slowly, then all at once. Caldwell Development became Caldwell Global. Their modest apartment became a mansion. Dinner at home became business receptions. Ethan's apologies for being late became irritation whenever Claire asked where he had been. That Tuesday morning, she carried coffee toward his home office. The door was partly open. Ethan was downstairs speaking with a driver, and his phone remained on the desk. Claire did not touch it. She did not need to. A message appeared across the screen. "Vanessa, I wore the bracelet last night. It looked better on me than it ever did in the photographs." Claire froze. The bracelet had belonged to her mother. It had disappeared from Claire's jewelry box 2 weeks earlier. Ethan had told her the insurance company would investigate. A second message appeared. "Vanessa, after the gala, you will not have to pretend anymore." Claire heard Ethan approaching and stepped away from the desk. He entered, saw her face, and immediately looked at the phone. "How long?" Claire asked. Ethan closed the office door. "This is not a conversation we are having before my meeting. How long have you been with her?" He placed the phone in his pocket. "You are emotional. I am asking a simple question. You are 8 months pregnant and searching for reasons to become upset." The answer was so carefully designed that Claire understood the affair was not new. He had learned how to deny without denying. "Did you give her my mother's bracelet? It is insured." That is not an answer. Ethan checked his watch. "Vanessa has helped protect this company through difficult negotiations. She understands the pressure I carry. And I do not." "You used to." The words landed more deeply than a shout. Claire followed him toward the hallway. "I invested everything I had in you, and you have been repaid many times over." She stopped. To Ethan, their history had become a transaction. Her sacrifice was not love. It was an early investment for which the mansion, cars, and clothing were sufficient compensation. That evening, Vanessa arrived at the house carrying gala seating charts. She walked through the front door without ringing the bell. Ethan did not introduce her. Vanessa placed the documents on the kitchen island, noticed Claire watching, and deliberately rested one hand on Ethan's shoulder. "We need to discuss the donor table," Vanessa said. Claire looked at the diamond bracelet on Vanessa's wrist. "Take that off." Vanessa glanced down. "Excuse me. It belonged to my mother." Ethan's face hardened. "Not here. This is my home." Vanessa removed the bracelet slowly, but instead of returning it, she placed it in Ethan's palm. "He gave it to me," she said. "Your problem is with your husband." For the first time, Vanessa had spoken honestly. Claire turned to Ethan. "Give it back." He closed his fingers around the bracelet. "After the gala." "Why after the gala?" "Because I will not allow another emotional performance before the most important event of the year." Claire understood then that Ethan was not trying to save their marriage. He was managing her until she had completed one final public appearance. Later that night, she found a draft statement on the printer in his office. It described Claire as exhausted, medically fragile, and temporarily withdrawing from the foundation for personal reasons. Vanessa would assume Claire's public duties. The statement was dated for the morning after the gala. Claire photographed every page. She also called her obstetrician, Dr. Maya Patel, and described the contractions she had been experiencing. Dr. Patel urged her to avoid stress and go to the hospital immediately if she experienced bleeding, fluid leakage, persistent pain, or reduced fetal movement. Claire considered staying home from the gala. Then she saw the line in Ethan's draft announcing that Vanessa would become acting chair of the foundation Claire had created in memory of her mother. Claire decided she would attend, not to protect Ethan's image, to protect her own name. At Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Claire was taken directly to obstetric triage. Monitors traced the baby's heartbeat and the tightening of Claire's uterus. Dr. Patel arrived before dawn and confirmed that the bleeding had stopped, but Claire was experiencing contractions and required observation. "You did the right thing by coming in," the doctor said. "Right now, the baby appears stable. That is good news. But I need you to understand that physical strain and acute stress can complicate a pregnancy. We are going to watch both of you carefully." Claire nodded. "Will she be all right?" "We have every reason to be hopeful." Only then did Claire ask whether Ethan had called. He had not. Ruth Ellison, the elderly donor who had knelt beside Claire in the ballroom, remained in the waiting area until sunrise. So did Daniel Ortiz, the banquet server who had recorded part of the confrontation. Daniel was 26, recently married, and terrified that the hotel might fire him for using his phone during work. "I thought somebody had to keep a record," he told Ruth. Everyone important was standing there, but nobody wanted to be first. Ruth looked through the glass toward Claire's room. Being first is what courage usually costs. The hotel's general manager acted quickly. He instructed the security director to preserve all surveillance footage, access logs, incident reports, and radio communications from the gala. A television journalist who had filmed the ambulance departure sent her original file to her network's legal department. Guests uploaded dozens of clips, but many were compressed, edited, or missing the moments before Claire knelt. Daniel's recording was different. Minutes before the confrontation, he had been replacing glassware behind a curtain near the stage. Vanessa and Ethan stood on the other side. "What if she refuses?" Vanessa had asked. "She will not," Ethan answered. "She challenged me at your house. Here, everyone will be watching. She cares too much about appearances. She will do exactly what I tell her." Daniel's phone captured their voices, the quartet in the distance, and the master of ceremonies testing a microphone. He saved the original file and did not alter it. By noon, Ethan's attorneys had sent the hotel a demand requesting that employees refrain from discussing the event. The letter did not order the hotel to destroy anything, but the tone was unmistakable. The hotel's general counsel responded by issuing a formal litigation hold. No footage would be erased. Claire's first visitor from Ethan's side arrived that afternoon. It was not Ethan. It was his chief of staff, carrying flowers and a proposed statement. "Mr. Caldwell is concerned about you," the chief of staff said. Claire looked at the flowers. The card had been signed by an assistant. "What does the statement say?" "That the evening involved a private misunderstanding, that you regret the disruption, and that you are grateful for the public's concern." "Does it say my husband made me kneel?" "No." "Does it say Vanessa was wearing property taken from me?" "No." "Does it say he refused to come to the hospital?" The chief of staff lowered his eyes. "Mrs. Caldwell, the company is facing significant pressure. So am I." He placed the statement on the table. "The board hopes this can be resolved privately." Claire tore the document once, then again. "Tell the board I am not a public relations problem." That evening, Attorney Abigail Foster entered Claire's room. Abigail was 58, silver-haired, and known for handling civil cases involving coercive control, reputational abuse, and serious personal injury. Ruth had called her. Abigail did not begin by asking how much money Claire wanted. She asked whether Claire felt safe going home. Claire considered the question. Ethan had never struck her, but he had taken her mother's bracelet, planned her public removal from the foundation, used her pregnancy to describe her as unstable, and arranged a spectacle designed to break her obedience in front of witnesses. "No," Claire said. "I do not feel safe." Abigail explained the first steps. They could ask the family court for a temporary domestic violence restraining order based on the pattern of abuse, threats, intimidation, and coercive conduct. That request could be considered quickly. A longer order would require notice and a hearing. Separately, Claire could file for divorce and bring civil claims against Ethan and Vanessa. Those claims would not reach a jury in days. There would be service, written responses, discovery, depositions, expert review, motions, and months of preparation. Claire seemed surprised. So there will not be a dramatic trial next week. No, Abigail said. Real cases take time. Powerful people often use that time to exhaust the person who challenged them. Can he erase the evidence? We will ask the court to preserve it, and we will send formal notices tonight. The hotel has already protected its files. Claire rested both hands over her daughter. What do you need from me? The truth, Abigail said, and the patience not to let him rewrite it. The next morning, while Ethan addressed reporters outside Caldwell Global and called the event an unfortunate family disagreement, Abigail filed the first papers. The judge granted temporary orders restricting Ethan's contact with Claire and preventing him from entering the residence where she would recover after leaving the hospital. A hearing on longer protection was scheduled. Ethan was also ordered not to harass, threaten, intimidate, or pressure her through employees. For the first time since the gala, Claire slept for 4 uninterrupted hours. When she woke, a nurse handed her a small envelope. Inside was her mother's bracelet. No note. No apology. Only the object Ethan had once believed could be returned as easily as trust. The temporary restraining order hearing took place 12 days later in a quiet family courtroom, not beneath television lights. Claire attended remotely from a private room at her doctor's office. Ethan appeared with 2 attorneys. Vanessa was not a party to that hearing, but her name appeared throughout Claire's declaration. Ethan's counsel argued that he had never threatened physical violence and that the gala incident was being distorted by edited videos. Abigail did not rely on the viral clips. She submitted Claire's photographs of the prepared statement, messages concerning the bracelet, witness declarations, the hospital record, and the hotel's unedited footage showing the sequence from Claire's arrival to the ambulance departure. The judge did not decide the eventual civil claims. She decided whether protection was necessary while the broader case proceeded. After hearing both sides, she issued a long-term restraining order for 3 years. Ethan could communicate only through attorneys regarding the divorce, finances, and the unborn child. He could not approach Claire's temporary residence, her medical providers, or the foundation office while she was present. The judge also warned both parties not to use employees or online campaigns to intimidate witnesses. Outside the courthouse, Ethan's spokesman called the order procedural. Inside the courtroom, Ethan had been ordered to surrender control. 2 weeks later, Abigail filed a civil complaint in Los Angeles County Superior Court naming Ethan and Vanessa as defendants. The claims included intentional infliction of emotional distress, civil liability arising from domestic abuse, conversion of Claire's bracelet, and battery against Vanessa for the physical contact that destabilized Claire. The complaint alleged that Ethan and Vanessa had coordinated the public confrontation and that their conduct caused physical injury, medical expense, emotional trauma, and damage to Claire's role at the foundation. The defendants were served and given time to respond. Their lawyers denied that the confrontation had caused Claire's medical condition. They claimed Vanessa had merely tried to steady her. They argued that Ethan's statements were harsh but protected expressions arising from a private dispute. Then discovery began. For 9 months, the case moved through conference rooms instead of dramatic court sessions. Attorneys obtained the hotel's original surveillance files directly from the recording system. A forensic examiner documented file hashes, timestamps, camera locations, and the chain of custody. Daniel turned over the phone that had created the backstage recording. Experts made a forensic copy and confirmed that the original audio had not been edited. The hotel's event planner produced seating charts, staff messages, and an email from Vanessa requesting that security personnel allow Mr. Caldwell to handle any family interruption personally. That email did not prove the entire plan. It did prove anticipation. Depositions revealed more. Under oath, Vanessa first said she had no idea Claire would attend the gala. Abigail showed her an email she had sent Ethan that morning. Make sure she comes. The board needs to see how unstable she is. Vanessa then claimed unstable referred to Claire's pregnancy fatigue. Abigail placed the message beside the draft announcement removing Claire from the foundation. Vanessa stopped smiling. Ethan's deposition lasted 7 hours. He admitted giving Vanessa the bracelet without Claire's permission. He admitted preparing the statement before the gala. He admitted remaining at the event after the ambulance left. But he insisted he had never wanted Claire or the baby harmed. "Did you want her to kneel?" Abigail asked. Ethan looked toward his lawyer. "You may answer," the lawyer said. "I wanted an apology." "That was not my question." A long silence followed. "Yes," he said finally. "In that moment, I wanted her to kneel." Abigail did not ask another question for several seconds. She allowed the court reporter's keys to become the only sound in the room. The medical evidence required equal care. Dr. Patel did not claim that one sentence or one emotion could be isolated as the sole cause of Claire's bleeding. She explained that Claire had experienced acute emotional distress, physical instability, uterine contractions, and bleeding in close sequence. A retained maternal-fetal medicine specialist reviewed the records and concluded, to a reasonable medical probability, that the combined acute stress and physical incident materially contributed to the threatened preterm labor. The defense hired its own expert, who argued that pregnancy complications can occur without any external cause. That disagreement was legitimate. It would be decided through testimony, cross-examination, and the civil standard of whether Claire had proved her claims more likely than not. Claire gave birth before the case reached trial. Her daughter arrived 3 weeks early but healthy. Claire named her Grace Ellen Caldwell, honoring both hope and the mother she had lost. Ethan was notified through counsel. Under temporary family court orders, any contact with the child was supervised until custody issues could be evaluated separately. He sent an enormous arrangement of white roses. Claire donated them to the maternity ward. Motherhood changed the rhythm of the lawsuit. Claire no longer attended every strategy meeting. She fed Grace during video conferences. She learned to separate the case from the life it was meant to protect. One evening, Abigail found Claire rocking the baby beside a window while reviewing Ethan's deposition. "You do not have to read that tonight," Abigail said. Claire closed the transcript. "For months I thought the trial was where I would get my life back. And now," Claire looked at Grace, "now I think the trial is where I make sure he cannot tell her I imagined what happened." When the court finally set a trial date, more than a year had passed since the gala. The viral outrage had faded. The evidence had not. On the first morning of trial, there were no cameras inside the courtroom. The judge had not authorized broadcasting, and the gallery was warned that phones had to remain off. Reporters filled every available seat and hurried into the hallway during recesses to describe what they had seen. Claire entered wearing a navy dress and a small gold bracelet that had belonged to her mother. Grace stayed with Ruth Ellison, who had become an unexpected friend. Ethan sat at the defense table beside Vanessa. Their attorneys had separate files and separate strategies. Vanessa's counsel planned to argue that Ethan had manipulated everyone, including her. Ethan's counsel planned to describe Vanessa as the person who escalated an argument he had tried to control. The alliance that had humiliated Claire was already breaking. Abigail's opening statement was quiet. "This case is not about punishing an unhappy marriage," she told the jury. "It is about a planned public act, an unwanted physical contact, a medical emergency, and the consequences that followed. You will see the full recordings. You will hear how they were preserved. You will hear from the people who were there and from doctors who treated Mrs. Caldwell. At the end, we will ask you to hold each defendant responsible for what the evidence shows that person did." Ethan's attorney urged jurors not to let a viral scandal replace proof. Vanessa's lawyer said a brief touch had been misinterpreted during chaos. The hotel's security director testified first. He explained the camera system, retention procedures, and the steps taken to preserve the original files. A digital forensic examiner then explained how she verified timestamps and confirmed that the footage introduced in court matched the preserved originals. Only after that foundation was established did the jury see the ballroom from 4 angles. The video was less dramatic than the edited version online. That made it more painful. There was no music added beneath Claire's fear. No slow motion. No caption telling viewers what to feel. Jurors watched Ethan point toward the floor. They watched Claire brace one hand on a chair before kneeling. They watched Vanessa move close and make contact with Claire's shoulder. They watched Claire sway, reach for her abdomen, and look down at the blood on her dress. They watched Ethan remain beside the stage as paramedics carried his wife away. Ruth testified next. "Why did you approach Mrs. Caldwell?" Abigail asked. Because everyone else was waiting for someone more important to move first. What did she say? She said something was wrong, and then she asked us to save her baby. On cross-examination, Ethan's lawyer asked whether Ruth disliked him before the gala. I admired his foundation, she said. That is why I donated. So the incident changed your opinion? No, Ruth replied. His decisions changed my opinion. Daniel Ortiz authenticated his phone and described the circumstances of the backstage recording. The forensic examiner confirmed that the file was original. Ethan's lawyer challenged whether the voices could be identified. Daniel said he had served both Ethan and Vanessa minutes earlier and heard them from only a few feet away. Additional comparison evidence supported the identification. The judge admitted the recording. Vanessa's voice entered the courtroom. What if she refuses? Then Ethan's answer. Here, everyone will be watching. She cares too much about appearances. She will do exactly what I tell her. No one spoke when it ended. Because Ethan's own statement was being offered against him, the dispute was not solved by calling it rumor. The jury had heard an authenticated recording and would decide what it meant. Dr. Patel testified about Claire's admission, bleeding, contractions, fetal monitoring, and treatment. She carefully avoided exaggeration. Can stress alone always be identified as the cause of a pregnancy complication? Abigail asked. No. Can acute stress and physical instability contribute to contractions and bleeding? Yes. The maternal-fetal medicine specialist explained his opinion that the combined events at the gala materially contributed to the medical emergency. The defense expert disagreed about the strength of that connection, but conceded that the timing was clinically significant. Then Claire took the stand. She did not cry when she described the affair. She did not cry when the bracelet disappeared. She did not cry when the video played. She cried when Abigail asked why she had knelt. I felt pain, Claire said. I was afraid I would fall, and some part of me still believed that if I obeyed him, he would stop before our daughter was harmed. Ethan lowered his eyes. On cross-examination, his lawyer suggested Claire had attended the gala despite medical advice to avoid stress. My doctor told me to seek care if I had warning signs, Claire answered. She did not tell me my husband was going to organize a public confrontation. The lawyer changed subjects. Vanessa testified in her own defense. She admitted wearing Claire's bracelet and sending the email about making sure Claire attended. She denied trying to push her. Why did you touch her? Her attorney asked. To get her attention. Abigail stood for cross-examination. You wanted a pregnant woman on her knees to pay closer attention to you? Vanessa's face tightened. That is not what I meant. Did you ask her to apologize louder? Yes. Did you know she had reported pain? I heard her say something was wrong. Did you step away and call for medical help? Vanessa looked toward the jury. No, Ethan chose not to testify at trial. His deposition admissions were read into evidence. Jurors heard him acknowledge that he wanted Claire to kneel, gave away her bracelet, prepared the statement removing her from the foundation, and stayed at the gala after the ambulance left. In closing, Abigail did not ask jurors to decide whether Ethan was a bad husband. Bad marriages are not torts, she said. Affairs are not automatically civil claims. The law does not exist to punish every betrayal. But planning a spectacle to intimidate your pregnant spouse, taking her property, directing her humiliation, and participating in conduct that leads to a foreseeable emergency are actions. Actions create responsibility. She then addressed Vanessa separately. Ms. Brooks was not merely present. She wore the stolen bracelet, demanded the apology, made the physical contact, and refused to help after Claire said something was wrong. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When the clerk announced that the jury had reached a verdict, Claire felt no triumph. She felt Grace's bracelet-sized hospital band folded inside her purse and remembered the night she had listened for a heartbeat beneath ballroom lights. The jurors found Ethan liable on the claims arising from his intentional conduct and the taking of Claire's property. They found Vanessa liable for battery and for her participation in the planned humiliation. The jury awarded compensation for medical expenses, emotional harm, and other proven losses. In a separate phase, after considering additional evidence about the defendant's planning and financial condition, the jury also awarded punitive damages. The numbers were substantial, but they were not the sentence that changed the room. The judge looked at Ethan and Vanessa before addressing the parties. Civil damages cannot reverse an event, she said. They cannot return a person to the moment before trust was broken. Their purpose is to recognize proven injury, assign legal responsibility, and, when the law permits, deter conduct marked by oppression or malice. She emphasized that custody, dissolution, and the existing domestic violence restraining order remain matters for the family court. No one was being sent to prison in that civil courtroom. The judgment did not transform cruelty into a criminal conviction. It did something both narrower and more honest. It placed responsibility on the record. Outside, reporters crowded the courthouse steps. Claire's attorneys asked whether she wanted to make a statement. She had prepared one paragraph, but when the microphones turned toward her, she folded the paper. "This was never about making another person kneel," she said. "It was about proving that no amount of money gives someone the right to take another person's dignity, safety, or voice." Then she left. Ethan pursued post-trial challenges, but the evidence had now been examined in court, contested by both sides, and accepted by a jury. The Caldwell Global Board removed Ethan after an independent investigation. Vanessa resigned, and the foundation adopted rules preventing any executive from removing its chair without an independent vote. Claire returned to the foundation 6 months later. She did not return as Ethan Caldwell's wife. The divorce was completed under confidential financial terms, while the custody court established a gradual, professionally supervised process focused on Grace's well-being. Claire did not ask the court to erase Ethan from their daughter's life. She asked that every decision be guided by safety, accountability, and the child's needs rather than his public image. On Grace's first birthday, Claire visited the maternal health clinic the foundation had opened in South Los Angeles. The waiting room was filled with women holding babies, grandparents carrying diaper bags, and nurses moving between examination rooms. Ruth Ellison stood beside the entrance with Daniel Ortiz, who was now training to become a paramedic. Neither of them had become famous. Claire preferred it that way. A young mother approached Claire and said she had watched the gala video during a frightening period in her own marriage. "I kept thinking about the moment you stood up," the woman said. Claire looked down at Grace, who was reaching for the bracelet on her wrist. "The standing took longer than the video shows," Claire replied. That evening, after the clinic closed, Claire sat alone in the nursery. Grace slept beneath a mobile of paper stars. The house was smaller than the mansion, but every room felt inhabited rather than displayed. Claire opened a box containing documents from the trial. On top rested the draft statement Ethan had prepared before the gala, the one that described her as unstable and announced Vanessa's takeover of the foundation. She did not burn it. She placed it in the archive of a new program teaching women how to identify financial control, reputational abuse, and coercive behavior before those patterns become dangerous. The program offered legal referrals, counseling, and confidential safety planning. Claire understood something she had not known on the ballroom floor. Dignity was not a fragile object another person could permanently steal. It could be injured. It could be hidden beneath shame and fear. But it could also be rebuilt through truth, boundaries, and the people willing to move when everyone else remained still. Years later, Grace would see a photograph of her mother leaving the courthouse. She would ask why so many people were gathered around her. She would say, "There was a day when many people saw something wrong and waited for someone else to help. A few people did not wait." Then she would tell her daughter about Ruth, Daniel, the nurses, the lawyers, and the hotel employees who preserved the truth. Because the strongest ending was never that a wealthy man lost a case. It was that a frightened woman discovered she had never been as alone as power wanted her to believe. And if you stayed until this final moment, remember the question from the beginning. What would you have done in that ballroom? Share your answer below. Subscribe for more stories of courage and justice, and carry this one truth with you. The first person who refuses to look away may be the person who changes everything.